thank you, Speaker Huston, for joining us. We'd like to ask you some questions here at the beginning of session, and then when session is over, we'd like to sit down again and see where we are, take the temperature. Sure. Okay, let's start with health care. House Republicans released their agenda yesterday. In some of the bills, House Republicans are taking on prior authorizations, nonprofit hospitals, and what they charge for services. We know it's not the first time that lawmakers have tried to take on both of these issues. So how unified is the caucus this time around with these proposals? Can you get some of them over the finish line this time?
Yeah, so we have in the past, and obviously this is something Governor Braun has campaigned on and is very active in these discussions. We're excited to offer 2 agenda bills that deal with creating more competition in the healthcare space and also creating an opportunity to provide more transparency to the people using it.
Speaking of Governor Braun, we just had a press availability with him. He says he's already met with you and Leader Bray today to talk property taxes, and in his words, we're going to get stuff done. So what kind of stuff do you think will get done? I know when we've talked about property taxes in the past, we've kind of heard, okay, it might be incremental, it might be over a couple years, not in one big session, and he, we're going to get stuff done, were his words.
I think Governor Braun, we are going to get stuff done. And, we're all committed to doing everything we can to reduce the property tax burden for Hoosiers. And we all agree on finding the right balance to make sure that local units of government, where all property taxes are both collected and received, have the proper resources they need to provide the services that their communities expect. So, it's finding that right balance, but we look forward to continuing those conversations. We will get stuff done. We have a good track record of doing that. We'll do it again this year. Okay.
In his inaugural speech this week, he addressed the need to tackle healthcare, which we just talked about, chart a new path. He said we can accept high healthcare costs as inevitable or take on the opaque system to lower costs and increase transparency for all Hoosier families like I did in my own business 16 years ago. How will lawmakers address this over the next few months? Will Hoosiers see tangible change when we're all done? Something you can really look at and say, okay, this changed, this got done.
Yeah, we've already seen tangible change in the fact that we've seen a reduction in hospital costs, and we can measure that. We've seen that. We'll continue to, what we're focused on now on is continue to make sure that those costs are reduced and then that they're passed through the insurance companies to individual businesses and the individuals that are paying these premiums. So, that's where our focus is right now, and I think there's a great commitment, and I want to be fair, a bipartisan commitment. We've worked together with our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to make sure that we make progress in this area. I think like we've already made progress. There's certainly more to be made, and that's what we're going to do this session.
In terms of Medicaid, there's been talk about the need to contain Medicaid costs, right, which have been described as unsustainable the way that they're going. So how do you decide where those cuts are made, who and who does not get aid when it comes to Medicaid?
Yeah, so look, we certainly first and foremost understand that Medicaid serves the most vulnerable in our communities and in our state. So we want to be responsible in that way. Where it first begins is making sure the right people are receiving the Medicaid services, and that's around eligibility. Are the right people? Can we make sure that there aren't people that shouldn't be receiving the services getting those? And that's where it begins. Second thing is like there has to be some discussion around regarding the extent of services. And again, it's always about finding that right balance and making sure you support the most vulnerable. It is unsustainable. I would agree with that term, and I may even have used it before. And we're going to have to find that right balance because if not, the Medicaid budget, the Medicaid portion of the budget will basically overcome everything else.
It's overtaking education almost.
Right? Well, it's not. It's certainly we spend almost 50% of our budget for K-12 education. If Medicaid continues to grow the way it's growing today, that won't be the case in the future.
When it comes to education, Republicans have said they're committed to getting universal vouchers over the finish line. I think you addressed that the last time we talked. How much are you expecting that to cost, and how do you pay for it?
Well, we're working with LSA, Legislative Service Agency, to understand that cost. I want to be fair. In Indiana, we fund students. We don't fund schools. So, we will continue to increase the appropriation. We spend $9 billion. We spent over $9 billion this year in K-12 student support. We'll spend more than that next year. So, we fund students. We'll make sure that there'll be an increase in funding, and some of those, and those dollars follow kids no matter what type of school they go to.
What about publicly funded pre-K? Some would argue, the other side would argue that to fund that more helps lay a stronger foundation to improve outcomes, the state's goal to improve outcomes.
Well, we're having conversations about that. We've funded, we've always funded pre-K. We've made significant investments in the last few budgets in pre-K. I know that's a priority for Governor Braun, and we're having those discussions again. And there's finite amount of resources. We need to make sure we use them appropriately. But I'm sure that's going to be a hot budget discussion for the next few months.
We know the Senate is dealing right now with addressing property taxes. You talked about that yesterday. They've got property taxes. The House has the budget. You'll eventually get that property tax bill and take a look at what the House wants to do with it. How do you do that? Lower property taxes and expand vouchers. How do you do both?
Well, I mean, two different buckets of money. So at the end of the day, the state pays for students. The state pays the K-12 tuition support. So that doesn't have any impact on property taxes. And so, I think those are two different discussions. We'll treat them as separately. One deals with the state budget that we appropriate. Local property taxes fund everything from municipalities to cities and towns to counties to schools. So, just two different buckets, two different conversations.
Okay. Also, in terms of education, House Republicans have the Bill 1002 that kind of cuts state regulations for schools in terms of teacher training, oversight for charters, kind of leaving it up more to the locals to address, is how I understood it yesterday. Are you confident that local school systems are going to be able to step into that space that lawmakers are opening up for them by giving them that control?
I think they're excited to do that. We've had great stakeholder meetings and folks telling us they're excited about House Bill 1002 in the education community. What happens oftentimes is it just becomes a little bit like scope creep, where somebody comes in with an idea, then the next person comes with an idea, the next thing you're staring at a book of laws and regulations that are about this in size. So, our goal and our hope is to streamline that and return the power back to the individual principals, teachers, and school leaders.
So if locals would now set the requirements, does that mean if I move across town, my kid could get a different education in a different district depending on what that district's training requirements
On some,
are?
yeah, absolutely. But I think that recognizes that in different communities there are different needs, and ensuring that, again, having a lot of confidence that the local schools can determine what those needs are.
Okay. Turning to housing, House Republicans are calling to add $25 million to the Residential Housing Infrastructure Assistance Revolving Fund. Say that 3 times real fast. Are lawmakers trying to encourage communities to build denser housing?
Just to build housing. I mean, right now, if you go talk to young people in their 20s and 30s who are looking for homes, or parents of people, of kids in their 20s and 30s, housing availability is a huge problem across our state. It's a good thing that we have lots of folks that want to get to Indiana and stay in Indiana, but we have to find more housing. What the bill does is it comes along local communities and makes sure the infrastructure costs, which are expensive, like a water and sewer and those types of things, can help support that so that more housing can be developed. It's still, it's still up to local communities to determine that, what the price points are, what type of housing. But look, we just need more housing across the state. This is an opportunity to partner with the local communities to do that.
I was going to say, are there certain kinds of houses you hope get built in this?
We need them all. I mean, and the fact of the matter is particularly in single residential, we need a lot of those. Mm-hmm. But across the spectrum, we need more housing all across our state.
There's like a land use preference clause in this. Is that a way to kind of influence local housing policy, zoning maybe? The way I read it is, okay, if you loosen some of these zoning restrictions in one area, then you will qualify for the money.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're trying to do is make sure that it goes in. I mean, obviously, the goal is to get into the starter home, the mid-range home. And a lot of times, again, working with our partner communities and making sure that their regulations aren't so burdensome that they turn a house, add $50,000, $100,000 worth of regulation to a house. Again, we're looking for a product that meets the needs of that community, but also is responsible to create the type of housing that we need.
Republicans have the supermajority. Are there areas where you can come together with the Democrats for bipartisan consensus? Maybe healthcare was one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always like to remind people the vast majority of the bills, 97%, I think, in the last legislative session, were bipartisan support. There are some things that we do disagree on, and that's okay. But they're our friends across the aisle. They represent Hoosiers, and we're conscious of that. So we've come together on certainly on healthcare issues, on education issues, on law enforcement issues, budget issues. The vast majority there's bipartisan consensus. Yes, there's a few that are more contentious where there's just agreement to disagree. But we respect the important role that they play and the fact that they represent Hoosiers too.
In terms of legalizing cannabis, I know I've heard you say that no one has convinced you yet that legalizing it is a good idea, that you haven't heard really a convincing argument. Representative Van Adder just filed a bill today, 1630, to make it legal, regulate it for folks 21 and up to use. He says 7 out of 10 Hoosiers support it through studies that have been done. Is that a convincing enough argument if you've got 70% of Hoosiers, according to a lot of studies, saying, look, let's legalize this?
Yeah, I think, look, we have members of our caucus who share all sorts of opinion on this, on the legalization. For us, if you talk to law enforcement, you talk to employers, they have real concerns about this issue. I think, some of the things that have been presented in the past, like it's not addictive, that helps with mental health, I think that's largely in the last two years been debunked. That we're going to receive a bunch of money. There's a bunch of states that have done it, that they realize their costs for social services have gone up on legalization. So again, I just want to make sure as we have this conversation, we have the full conversation, a full awareness to it. But look, I want to be respectful of Representative Van Adder and other members who do believe that this should be legal. There will always be that conversation.
Can we talk about the proposal to add some Illinois counties to Indiana?
Sure.
That got a lot of people were talking about that yesterday. Some have suggested it's a distraction. Can you realistically see that happening?
Well, look, here's what our point is. 33 counties in Illinois have voted to take on some level of succession. 7 just this past November. And our point of it is look, we should always be thinking about how does Indiana grow. Look. Honestly, it allows us to tell a very nice story about all the great things going on in Indiana comparatively to some of our neighbors. And we'd love to see it happen. We'd love to continue to have those conversations. Ultimately, the way this process has to go is the Illinois General Assembly would have to pass a similar resolution to allow a commission to come together to look at the borders. But there seems to be a lot of energy in a good portion of Illinois, 33 counties in Illinois, to have this conversation. We just want to raise our hands and say we're available to have that conversation.
Okay. Pew Research Center, they did a study that broadly showed people have lost faith and trust in their elected officials. Given some of the issues that we've had in Indiana, like the $1 billion Medicaid shortfall, what can lawmakers on both sides of the aisle do to restore the faith and trust of the people who sent you all here?
Yeah, every day. That's an incredibly important thing, and we have to earn it. And I think how we do business, the results that we have in Indiana, I think should help people feel like, we've said what we're going to do, and we've gone out and done it with really good results that have taken place. But, it's an honor and a privilege to serve, and we should never forget that. And we need to earn people's trust and continue to keep people's trust. And the nice part for us is in the House is every 2 years there's a chance to have that conversation where people have a chance to decide whether we're doing the job they want us to do or not. And but all of us in government and all of us in society have to make sure we keep the trust of the peers that we have, and particularly for us, the constituents we serve.
The State House can seem complicated, overwhelming at times, maybe if you're an outsider coming in. What advice do you have for Hoosiers on how they can get more involved in understanding the process, what's happening here, to better understand what y'all are doing? It can seem esoteric at times, right? Those bills, when you look at them, pretty complicated. How can folks understand this better?
Yeah, I think a couple things. It's a great question, and we, first of all, reach out to your representatives, reach out to your senators. I think that you'll find they're responsive, and you're oftentimes going to talk to the individual because as you know, we don't have big staffs around here. So I wouldn't get caught up in the process. Begin with what's the key foundation of each bill. Some are more complicated than others, but I would just say reach out. attend meetings that you can, watch online. I mean, I recognize most people don't have the opportunity to come down here, but we not only do we make sure they're all online, we store them online, so you have the opportunity to watch the meeting. If those things are of interest to you, reach out to your representative senator. We'd love to hear from you. We often do, and then it'll just create conversations.
I've heard you say a few times now, don't judge us by what we do in the beginning, don't judge us by what we do in the middle, judge us by what we do at the end. Yeah. So where do you hope House Republicans will be on some of these legislative priorities at the end of all of this?
Well, look, budget year, we want to pass a budget that does what it's always do. We're going to continue to cut taxes. We're going to make sure we spend less than we bring in. We're going to invest in things like K-12 and infrastructure. But also we want to have a year where we make significant strides in being a national leader in reducing healthcare costs and deregulating our schools and expanding the school choice program that allow parents to choose where their kids go to school. We want to make sure that we increase housing stock in our state, that we support a strong criminal justice system that is a foundation for so much of our society. And obviously, we have great opportunities in things like energy to be a national leader and invest in those types of things. So, we have a big agenda. We have an agenda we're excited about. And again, we feel like at the end of the day, there's a lot of things to celebrate that have taken place in Indiana. Sometimes the process is a little bit, messy to get there, but, the outcomes have been really good.
I think that covers it for us. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Did I miss anything that you think is important?
It's pretty comprehensive. I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Okay, Speaker Huston, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.